This whole video is based on the statements, tables and values published in this Gazette of 2018 and Gazette of 2001 and also the Manual of 1981. The links to download all these documents are given in the description. This is the second video of the 3 videos in the series. Let us quickly summarize the process with an example before starting this flowchart. This imaginary case had 50% functional loss in lower limb. We can picturize it on a scale of 0 to 10 like this. He also had 3 listed complications. Value of complications in the list were 3%, 6% and 9%. In addition, he had a shortening of 1.5 inches which is calculated as 8%. However, in real life situations, you are not given total functional loss as such. You will be testing the patient and calculating the summary value of functional loss in a step-by-step process. During the process, you will be doing weighing and combining as and when required. Finally, you end up in a value called summary value of functional loss or effective impairment. Let us use lowercase I to represent this value. Because of usage of weightage and combining formula, whatever may be the severity of affliction, maximum value of effective impairment will be 90. In this case, the victim had total functional loss of 50%. Processing shrinks it to 90% of its original value. It becomes summary value of functional loss of 45%. This is the first stage of disability assessment. Let us deal with the complications now. In this case, we have the list of eligible complications. Let us total them. The number we get can be called as total percentage of eligible complications or TELC, as shown below. In this case, 3 plus 6 plus 9 becomes 18%. Independent complications like shortening or dominant hand are also processed in the same manner. In this case, we have only one independent complication, shortening. So, TLC of independent complications in this case is 8%. We have this statement in Gazette 2018 which says that extra points are percentage of impairment. We know shortening is calculated separately, but according to this statement, it is also percentage of impairment. This statement means the extra points or extra impairment caused by complications or additional points is proportional to the impairment. The resultant value we get is the manifestation of the complications in the form of impairment. It is the extent of indirect impairment caused by complications. Let us call that value as extent of complication or EXE. In this case, we have a functional loss of 45% and total complications or TLC is 18%. So EXE is 18% of 45%, that is 8.1%. That is the extent of impairment due to listed complications. The extent of impairment due to unlisted independent complications like shortening in case of lower limb and dominant hand and shortening in case of upper limb is calculated similarly but separately at this stage. Let us call that value as EXEIC, and in this case EXEIC is 8% of 45% or 3.6%. Look at this statement from the Gazette of 2001. It says that the extra points should not exceed 10% of total impairment. In this case of 45% total impairment, 10% of it or 4.5% is allowed. Let us call that value as allowed limit of complications or ALC. So out of this 18% manifestation or EXE, only 4.5% or ALC is allowed. If the quantity of manifested complications or EXE by itself is less than this limit or ALC, we have to take the lower value. Simply it means we have to take the lower value between EXE and ALC. However, let us note that this rule applies only to the listed complications. The unlisted and independent complications like shortening and dominant hand are excluded from this limit of 10%. Let us find the lower value among the extent of complications EXE and allowed limit of complications ALC. The resultant value we get can be called as processed complications or considered complications C. In the last step, we have to add I and C to get the total medical disability or PPI. In this final stage, we also have to add the extent of complications due to unlisted independent complications like shortening and dominant hand. Here, summary value of functional loss I is 45%, considered complications C is 4.5%, and the extent of complications due to independent complications EXEIC is 3.6%. Finally, it becomes a white strip of medical disability of 53.1% length. That completes the gross or whole picture. Now let us move to the flowchart. Flowchart makes it very easy to understand the assessment of disability. This flowchart shows the process given in Gazette in a step-by-step and easy to remember manner. Disability according to manual is due to loss of function to the extent of 90% and complications to the extent of 10% in a case of 100% disability. So comes the formula D is equal to I plus C, where D is medical disability, I is processed impairment and C is processed complication. First step is to find I or effective impairment. To find the effective impairment, we have to measure the loss in various functions in a step-by-step process. This measurement process is primarily divided into two parts or components. For upper limb, these two functional components are called arm component and hand component. Each of these components can have a maximum value of 90. That means after processing the loss of functions in these components, the final value you can get at the maximum is 90. Arm component has 3 divisions, hand component has 3 groups. The 3 divisions of arm component are: first, AROM or active range of movements division, the second, muscle strength division, and the third, coordinated activities division. In each of these divisions, the losses can have a maximum value of 90. In the first two divisions, there is a system called weightage for each joint. For example, if the shoulder has 100% loss of movement in AROM division, you can take only 20% of it. In the third division or coordinated activities, there is a list of 10 functions which are given direct percentages 0 to 9%. The values are already weighted. Direct addition of these losses is done here. All of this means after calculation at the end of each division, the maximum value you can get is 90. Now we have come to the end of the arm component and we have 3 values. One value from each division, that is one value from AROM division, one value from muscle strength division, and one value from coordinated activities division. We have to arrange these 3 values in the descending order and apply combining formula twice. That is called telescopic combining. That results in only one value for the whole of arm component. As we have applied combining formula for summing up the impairments, the maximum value of losses in arm component that we can get will be limited to 90. Then comes the hand component. It has features and functions of hand arranged in 3 groups: prehension group, sensation group, and strength group. In the hand component, every function has a direct percentages or weighted values. Each of the group has a maximum value of 30%. All the values are already 90% weighted. After assessment of loss of function, simple addition of the values is done, which results in one single value for the hand component. And because of this direct and predefined weighted percentage assignment, the maximum value of hand component that one can get will be 90%. Now we have 2 values for the impairment in upper limb. One value for arm component with a maximum value of 90 and one value for hand component which is also having the maximum value of 90. After the summation, we want the total to be limited to 90% because in the formula D is equal to I plus C, I can have a maximum value of 90% only. How is it done? Of course, we use combining formula again. Combining formula, as we know already, is I is equal to A plus B into 90 minus A divided by 90. As we are using combining formula, the final value I or impairment gets limited to 90%. Now we have the final I for the upper limb. In the first formula, D is equal to I plus C. What is left is C or processed complications. Complications are also called additional weightage or extra points. The listed additional weightage for upper limb are pain, infection, malalignment, contracture, etc. The values of these extra points are listed as percentages applicable to a case of 100% functional loss. First, make a total of these percentages which are eligible. After this step, there are 2 approaches. The first one is called the approach of relative percentages and the second is called the approach of absolute percentages. The approach we take decides how much of complications are to be considered. In both approaches, there is a 10% limit. In case of relative approach, 10% of the processed impairment is the limit, and in case of absolute approach, absolute 10% is the limit. If considered complications is less than or equal to limit, its full value is considered. If the extent of complications is high, the limit is taken. Thus, we get processed complication C. You have to take your stand, and I prefer and follow the relative percentages and relative 10% max approach. At this stage, manifestation of unlisted and independent complications of upper limb, namely dominant hand which has a value of 10% of I and shortening which is a percentage of I, are to be calculated separately as EXEIC. Now we have both I and C. Let us directly add that I value to this C value to get medical disability D of the limb. If there is valid EXEIC, we have to add that 2 at this stage. That is the end of the formula D is equal to I plus C. Finally, let us go to the last step in the flowchart. In case of bilateral involvement, values of left and right upper limb are combined using combining formula. So, we get a single value for the whole upper limb in the locomotor system. That completes the flowchart for upper limb. In case of lower limb, the flowchart for the procedure is almost same. We have come to the end of this video. Please click the link in the description to go to the last video of this series regarding the usage of spreadsheet applications for a very easy, quick and accurate assessment of disability in locomotor system. Bye bye and have a nice time.